TPCSI fans, you want to revolutionize your sports investing habits? Allow me to tell you about WagerWire. WagerWire is an app that helps you become a superior bettor by allowing you to sync all your sports books and track all your bets in one place. See your current action, your betting history, and stats. You could also sign up for sports books and collect bonus offers. Follow them at WagerWire on X, as it's the best account on the platform. Head to App Store or Play Store now and search WagerWire and download the app. Good morning, sports fans from all around the globe. I am the host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and it is that time of the morning for good friend and colleague, Mr. Paul Stone, at Paul Stone Sports on Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it today, and of course at paulstonesports.org. Go check out that website. Amazing information, college football, college hoops, the best in the business. So go follow him now. Game day, as I was talking to him backstage, Notre Dame, Penn State, currently at the Circa. Good morning to Mr. Benson and Mr. Stevenson. Notre Dame -1 with a 45.5 tomorrow. Texas, Paul Stone's Texas Longhorns, about 5.5 point underdogs to the Ohio State. So we're going to get them to break down both of those games, of course. And before we get there, a shout out to our proud sponsor and partnerships. It's Atlanta Steaks and Seafood. Jump on over to Facebook, introduce yourself to Terry. While you're there, head on over to atlantasteaksandseafood.com. Place an order today. Use the promo code STEAKS10, and you'll be grilling probably by Monday morning. Shout out to Terry, a little minor surgery today at 11 a.m. So shout out, prayers up, quick and painless, and then we hope to get you back on Monday or Tuesday of next week, of course. Viva Tequila Seltzer. Go try a new lemon or coconut. The East Coast is coconut, wherever you purchase adult beverages. And last but never least, WagerWire. Head on over to Google Play, download that app. It's free. I promise you it will be one of the most used apps throughout 2025 and beyond. So without further ado, Mr. Paul Stone.
How we doing, Jeff? Good to be with you, and great to have semifinal action. So just 3 games left in this college football season. So a great Final Four, true blue bloods in the sport, and I think anybody can win. You know, we've got a real level playing field here, so it's going to be great to watch between now and January 20th.
I'm trying to think back. I know we had a show last Thursday. Well, I'm just because of the new people here. Let's say that how these 4 teams got to the Final Four. Notre Dame probably, I would say, some would say the most impressive, but how they handled Georgia. We know Georgia struggled. No Carson Beck. I've said all along, all year, they never replaced Lad McConkey or Brock Bowers, and it showed there. Ohio State, a couple weeks ago, dismantling Tennessee, good defense, SEC, and then goes to the Rose Bowl and just blows out Oregon, rips the heart out of those of the Ducks there. What surprised you the most between those two games?
Um, Ohio State, I mean, to me, they've been, I don't know if it's, I guess it's a little bit of a surprise, but Ohio State's just been so dominant in their two games. I mean, we'll talk about it some when I break down the Ohio State Texas game, but, Ohio State and Texas would have been, before the playoffs started, would have been about a pick 'em. Wouldn't have been, nobody would have been favored by more than one, I don't think. And here we are, Ohio State, kind of back and forth between being a 5.5 and a 6 point favorite. So certainly Ohio State's been very impressive, and Notre Dame, I mean, what can you say since, they were really concerned back in week 2 and rightfully so, when they lose to Northern Illinois of the Mid-American Conference. They have since, won each and every game. They've covered 10 straight games. So they've been a money maker at the betting window for those who partake. So, the Irish have been solid. The health of their running back, Jeremiah Love, is certainly a question going into tonight's game against Penn State in the Orange Bowl. He's been hindered a little bit. He's been hobbled, and he's certainly at something less than 100%, as are many of the players at this time of the year. But they're going to need him to be, close to full health to, to have a supreme effort tonight against the Nittany Lions.
All right, Paul. My spidey senses are up here, and I need you to maybe hit me over the head with the dummy stick, walk me off the ledge. I was born at night, not last night, okay? I'm going to go back to Notre Dame and Georgia. Notre Dame opened up -1.5 against Georgia at the Circa. Georgia got pushed all the way to -2, and then at kickoff, Notre Dame was 1.5, depending on where you shopped. Notre Dame, Penn State now. Notre Dame opened up at 1.5, and I'm staring at a -1. We just talked about for the last few minutes how dominant this Notre Dame team has been. So you're trying to tell me, not you, but they're trying to tell me Penn State and Georgia would have been a pick 'em, which to me, I know for a fact Georgia would have been a couple point favorites. What am I missing, Mr. Stone?
I'm not sure. I mean, I had it when I started making the line on the game, I had Notre Dame. What I try to do is the first thing I do is try to say, what range is this point spread going? Who's going to be favored, and what range is it going to be in? What corridor am I going to put it in? And I clearly settled on 1 to 2.5 with Notre Dame, the favorite, and I actually made Notre Dame -1 as well. I think the fact, it hadn't been a tremendously difficult schedule. Hadn't been an easy schedule, but it hadn't been, one of the top 10 or 15 schedules in the country. Hadn't played that type of opposition week in and week out. So, I think that had a little bit to do with it. The fact that Georgia, playing with Gunnar Stockton, a guy who had never started a football game before he, at the collegiate level anyway, before he, teed it up against Notre Dame last time out. I think that probably diluted that victory somewhat. And, Penn State's playing, they're playing at a fairly high level. Obviously, they've had their difficulties in big time games against big name opponents, but at a lesser degree, so is Notre Dame, in recent history. They hadn't really come to the forefront in these types of games. So, to me, the line was where it should be. These are two teams that they're certainly not restricted offensively. It's not like they're, not prolific and don't have some playmakers, but they're not as high scoring and as high octane as certainly Ohio State and even Texas. So that tightens the point spread some too. But I thought Notre Dame should be the favorite, but I thought it should be somewhere less than a field goal, and whoever wins the game is probably going to get the money on the point spread as well.
Now, here's the shocker in this game is we had Tyler Wyatt on earlier yesterday after Brady Kannon, 49.5 and 50. That actual under-over opened up at, and it's just been smashed and smashed again to the under. It's currently 45.5 at the Circa, 45 at the South Point, and a few other shops here. As you said, both teams, you would look at it, it's going to be a defensive battle. first one to 23-24 probably is going to win this. Do you see the same style and the same score right around somewhere in there?
I do. That's certainly one of my lanes in this guy. I don't have a huge feeling for the side. It's a difficult call in my mind, but I don't like giving up 5 points of value or 4.5 points of value, since it did open at 50 at Circa and some other places. And now, as you said, 45.5 as we speak. So I don't like giving up that kind of line value. But at the same time, while these teams, again, are good offensively, they're great defensively. I mean, both of these teams allow less than 16 points a game. They allow less than 300 yards a game. They only allow 4.4 yards per play, which places both in the top 10. They are run-heavy teams, which condenses the number of plays, which is certainly a factor when you're considering an under. In my process, at least, I have a formula that I use to calculate and project number of offensive plays. And for this game, a total of 125.5 offensive plays are projected, which is about 10 plays less than average. So it's going to be fewer plays. You got teams that don't throw the ball as much, again, as the norm. Notre Dame only throws the ball on 44.5% of its offensive plays. They rank 95th in passing play percentage. Penn State only throws it 43% of the time, so they throw it even less than Notre Dame, 104th in passing play percentage. So we're talking about two teams that are run heavy and physical, and they both defend the run well. So while they both run the ball well, they defend the run well as well there. Notre Dame only allowing 3.6 yards per carry, Penn State allowing 3.1. You look at Notre Dame, they didn't allow a running back to rush for 100 yards all season long, a running back. They did allow the two Service Academy quarterbacks, Bryson Daly of Army and Blake Harveth of Navy, to gain over 100. But they beat the Service Academies about 5 touchdowns. So make of that what you will. Penn State, on the other hand, they only had 2 100-yard rushers against them all year, and they barely went over the century mark. Woody Marks of USC rushed for 111 yards against Penn State. Ashton Genty of Boise in the last game out rushed for 105. So these are just two solid defensive teams. I think it's going to be a rock fight. I think points going to be at a premium. And you've got experienced quarterbacks too, which matters when you're playing unders, because those of us who I definitely play more unders than overs in college football. And, you'll have a game, say, under 50, and the teams will end up both with 225 total yards of offense, which is nothing, but the game will total 60 because there was a block punt and turnovers and just all the extraneous things that can happen in a college football game, defensive scores, non-offensive scores, that type of thing. When you have veteran quarterbacks, they are more likely to protect the ball, and you're not as vulnerable to those types of scores. So I think it's going to be a rock fight. 45.5 is a low total, but I still lean to the under here in that game tonight.
Well, and you talk about the rock fight, Notre Dame and Georgia. It was a low-scoring first half. Then the turnover, Notre Dame short field scores, and then the kickoff return. So people are digging deep and saying that Notre Dame offense, yes, it was Georgia and their defense. And this wasn't the Georgia defense from those 2 national championships. And I'm not taking anything away from them. They were good. But that wasn't the dominant Georgia defense. Yet the Notre Dame offense really sputtered throughout that game.
Yeah, and I mean, they're not that championship level good. I agree with you totally there, Jeff. But they're still pretty salty. I mean, Texas has a pretty high octane offense, and the Longhorns struggled, especially in the first game. But they were unable to run the ball on Georgia in both games. I think they averaged less than 3 yards a carry in both those losses to the Bulldogs. So they're still plenty good. So. Not maybe that level, that national championship level that Kirby's had there in recent memory. But Notre Dame definitely was. It's tough to muster offense up against some of these high quality defenses that you're seeing this time of the year. And of course, down to just 4 teams, all 4 of these play real good defense.
We'll be talking draft before you know it, NFL draft. Of course, two guys on the Penn State side. Stock keeps rising, rising, and rising. You talked about the quarterback, Aller. Talk about the tight end. I'm not comparing them to Brock Bowers. We saw what Brock Bowers did this year in the NFL. But the tight end for Penn State is putting up historical numbers as well.
Yeah, Tyler Warren he's a big target. He's a big man. He can catch the football. He can run with it after the catch. And those of us who watch Penn State play a lot of football this year, or even if you just watch them play a little football, you know that Tyler Warren's a jack of all trades at the collegiate level. You know, they'll give him the ball in the run game. He's a great blocker. So like he's going to be highly coveted. I think when you're talking about Brock Bowers, you know, we overuse it's kind of one of those catchwords now, and I think we overuse it. Generational, you know, he's a generational player at his position, but I think Brock Bowers truly is, at least for his generation, he is generational. So I don't know that I compare anybody to him. That guy, he didn't miss a beat going from the college game to the NFL. But Tyler Warren is a special tight end as well, and he's going to be. I'm glad you mentioned him because he's going to be a guy who could, you know, make the difference in the game tonight. He's going to be somebody that Notre Dame obviously is very, very well aware of. And some of us people who've been watching college football for a while, you know, we love to see the tight end involved. You know, we love to see the tight end be part of the offense and get some balls thrown their way. So we'll certainly see that tonight with Tyler Evans and not Tyler Warren, and not only him, but Notre Dame's tight end Mitchell Evans. He's a big tight. He's a good college tight end too. So Mitchell Evans, the tight end on the other sideline, he's probably going to come into play as well. So it's going to be interesting to see, you know, who kind of comes to the cream that rises to the top tonight and makes the plays for their team that ends up being the difference between winning and losing.
Tomorrow night, Texas, 5.5-point underdogs against the Ohio State. This Ohio State team has been a wagon since the loss to Michigan, which we all can say was the biggest blessing in disguise. Don't have to play in the Big Ten championship, host the Tennessee Vols, and then get their revenge game, which they wrapped up in the first quarter. Never mind throughout the rest of that. I hate to say 60 minutes of agony for Duck fans. True number 4.5, got steamed as high as 6. It's dropped to 5.5. I don't remember a Texas team this year catching a 5.5. The talk is Ohio State. How are you going to slow them down? How are you going to slow the youngster at wide receiver, the running game, the defense, Will Howard just playing off the charts? I'm going to say, let's pump the brakes. They're playing great football here, but let's give a little respect to the Horns here as well.
Yeah, Texas, as a matter of fact, Jeff, they've been favored in 27 straight games. So they've been the favorite in every game this year. The last time they were an underdog was early last year in week 2 of the 2023 season when they went to Alabama as a 7-point underdog. And in that game, Quinn Ewers probably played the game of his collegiate career to this point. The Longhorns upset the Crimson Tide 34-24. You know, this is a game where the divide of bettors is going to be the pros versus the Joes and the sharps versus the squares. The sharps don't always win, no question about it. It's probably pretty close to 50-50 if you get down to it. But the sharps are going to be more gravitating towards Texas, and the squares are going to be more seduced by Ohio State's recent performance. They're going to succumb to recent bias, be a prisoner of the moment, and just see what the Buckeyes have done in those last 2 games. And I'm going to be with the Joes and the squares in this one. I'm going to succumb to it as well. You just can't ignore what Ohio State, these 2 playoff games against 2 quality teams, 7th-ranked Tennessee and top-ranked Oregon. They gained in those 2 games a total of 973 yards, averaged 8 yards per play. Their opponents in those two games only 3.8 yards per play. So they averaged more than double yards per play what Tennessee and Oregon did against them. They just jumped out to such huge leads in both these games. They led Tennessee by 21 points just 12 minutes into the game, led Oregon by 24 points less than 20 minutes into the game. So these games were essentially, outside of a monumental comeback, were over before halftime. You mentioned their true freshman wide receiver, Jeremiah Smith, now up to 1,200 yards receiving on the year, back-to-back 100-yard receiving games in the playoffs against that outstanding Texas defense and secondary specifically. Going to be great matchups all night long. He'll be covered more often than not by Jim Thorpe Award winner Jahdae Barron, the top cornerback perhaps in college football. So that's going to be a matchup to watch. But what's really been key to me for Ohio State and the difference in these two games is the fact that their quarterback, Kansas State transfer Will Howard, has taken care of the football. He's thrown 55 passes in these two games. He has been pinpoint. He's thrown one interception, which has kind of been his Achilles heel, and that was against Tennessee when they were already up by 21 points. So it was pretty inconsequential, if you will. But if Howard takes care of that football, man, they are just clicking on all cylinders. They seem to be playing with great confidence and great purpose. And that Michigan game certainly seems to have been a wake-up call. If they had won that game, they would have gone into the playoffs perhaps on a 7-game win streak. That had been feeling fat and happy. We're going to get everybody, and that's when you're kind of susceptible and vulnerable. Instead, they go in, people are talking bad about them. Those fans in Columbus can be pretty rough. So they're talking about the coaches. They're certainly talking about the head coach, talking about the players. Everybody's down on them. And, man, there's nothing a college football coach loves more than the ability to sell the us against the world, to sell that message. We're the underdog. Nobody believes in us, and they're writing you off and all that. So this is a recommendation for sure. You look at this Texas side, they've had difficulty running the ball at times against the better teams on their schedule. Points in case, the 2 games against Georgia, and then their most immediate game against Arizona State. Trey Wisner, their top running back, he carried the ball a total of 52 carries in those 3 games. So a lot of carries. He only averaged 2.8 yards per carry in those 3 games. So Texas is going to have a lot of trouble. Ohio State's better against the run than not only those 2 teams, they're better probably than anybody in the nation against the run. Ohio State only giving up 92.6 yards rushing a game, 2.7 yards per carry. So it's hard to see Texas being able to rush the football. They only had 53 yards on 30 carries against Arizona State. One thing to watch for Texas, I think, in this game is the fact that if they're going to win, it's going to be because they win the turnover battle. And it's going to be because they pressure Will Howard and under duress force him into bad decisions. And they played. Will Howard started 3 games against the Longhorns at Kansas State. 3 of his career 34 interceptions have come against Texas. So Texas knows him. They know his Achilles heel, and they're going to unleash. They're going to gamble. They're going to probably give up some big plays, but Texas has to gamble. They've got to get him to turn the ball over. And a guy to watch, we've talked about Ohio State's true freshman receiver, Jeremiah Smith. We also know about Alabama's sensational true freshman receiver, Ryan Williams. Those guys were both nominees, semifinalists, for the Sean Alexander Award, symbolic of the best freshman in college football. Neither one of those guys won it. Texas defensive end Colin Simmons won it. The best freshman in all of college football, according to that vote. He's going to have to come up big. Number 11, the true freshman. He'll be one of the best players in college football next year, offense or defense. He's going to have to come up big against Ohio State. Doesn't play every down, but he's still got 9 sacks on the season, 14 tackles for loss, 3 forced fumbles. He's dropped back in coverage and got an interception. Number 11's a guy to watch. He'll have to play big for Texas to have a chance. But with that said, I like Ohio State -5.5 over the Longhorns.
We don't have Biff's Almanac, and it's the first year of the Final 12. And we know all the SEC, I'm going to use the word honkers, the SEC is the greatest in sliced bread, which year after year they put out the most NFL early draft picks, as we know here. But can you imagine if an Ohio State, Penn State final, what we'd have to listen to for 9 days before kickoff there, Paul?
Yeah, you wouldn't, I don't know what the odds would have been before the season If anybody, there's so many operators out there. Maybe somebody had a prop. Will the SEC have a team in the championship? It'd have probably been yes. I don't know, maybe minus $9, and the no would have been plus 500 or plus 600. So somebody could have made some money if they bet against the SEC. No question that conference has been down this year. I historically and even this year, regularly talk about the fact that the SEC is the top conference in the country, and I still think that's probably the case. But with that said, they didn't have, and even with Texas playing well, they don't have the type of teams at the top or the middle or in the middle that they've had, in recent history. And we'll see, time will tell whether that's a sign of things to come or whether it's a one-off. But I know it's one of the more polarizing topics among college football aficionados like ourselves about the SEC and, kind of where they rank in the pecking order. It's one of the beauties of college football. There's so much difference of opinion. There's so much, a lot of it's based on regionalism, the part of the country I think people are from and what they grew up watching, the conference and the teams that they followed. And certainly, the teams in the Midwest, the Ohio States, the Penn States, the Notre Dame can claim their spot in history. And then obviously, the last 20 years, I guess it is, virtually all the national championships have come from the SEC. So they can claim their stake their claim as well. So it would be something, though, if there's no SEC team left standing on January 20th when two teams play for the national title.
One of the last questions I'm going to ask you is, a lot of us have been saying, all right, Notre Dame, you can't have your cake and eat it too. For years and decades, they had their own network. They were on at 2:30 on their own channel every week. Here they are with one win away from going to the championship game. Either James Franklin or Mr. Freeman, one of them will be in that championship game. If Notre Dame wins the last two games and wins a national championship, no conference, and some people have said they had the easiest route, meaning, hey, you didn't have to play a conference championship. Here you are, standing in the Final Four here. Would that add a wet blanket effect here? Here a team, no conference, no titles, no attachments, yet here they are standing winning the national championship.
Well, I think if I understand it, they're always, as long as they're an independent, I think they're going to have to play in that first round under this current 12-team format. They won't get a bye, so they're going to have to play that game. The only way to me, we're the things that we believe in, we're fiercely independent about. And I think Notre Dame, they cling to their independent status and see it as in their best interest. So I think the only way they're going to, become a member of a conference is going to be if they're basically forced to. If the financial incentives or penalties are so great that they just can't stand it anymore. And I don't know, I don't know personally. I kind of like college football, kind of having its little nuances and so forth. I don't know really what it's hurting, but I know certainly there are those who do believe it's a substantial advantage and so forth and so on. And maybe it is somewhat of an advantage, but yeah, I think that would be it, that the money would become so great and that the powers that be would be collectively, forcing Notre Dame's hand where, they to have the, a doable path to the playoff, they need to be in a conference to get the most revenue portion and so forth. They would need to be in a conference. So we'll see how it turns out. And one of those kind of neat conversations that we have in college football that's a little bit unique to the sport.
Last question from me on this segment here, Paul. I'm going to play a little game with you. The NCAA sends you a nice little email and says, Mr. Stone, we are not going to 16 games next year. We're going to stick to the 12, but how would Paul Stone tweak next year's Final 12?
Well, you have to do something with the seeding. Obviously, the way that this turned out, that Texas had a relatively easy road, as did Penn State, just thinking off the top of my head. So in Oregon, they get a bye, but then by getting a bye, they get to play Ohio State right off the bat. What a perk that was for being the top seed in the tournament. And the reason they played Ohio State is they're not looking, and I know power ratings aren't the end all be all, but they're looking at that rock column too much, the one loss. So it is always going to be subjective. There's always going to be the human element that's going to make the ultimate determination. But I think you have to consciously say, it's going to be more about the team's performance against their schedule. We're not going to just get tied into this one loss that, well, they've got 0 and they've got 1. So we got to give the 0 team a better position. That's just, to me, that's just insanity. You look at Ohio State and Texas. They're going to play the opener next year in Columbus, Texas at Ohio State. The loser of this game Friday is going to have to play the other in back-to-back games. And looking forward to 2025, the loser of Texas, Ohio State, if one of them is going to lose, and then they very well might lose another game, should that team be penalized for playing either Texas or Ohio State? Should we be denied those types of games? You're ultimately going to have those games not take place because teams are saying under the system, there's no advantage whatsoever. It's only a disadvantage because these people have no idea what they're evaluating. So the main thing would just be, it's going to be all about, as I like to say, it's not always how you play, it's who you play. And, not to pick, I know a lot of people have picked on Indiana, and I can't absolutely say because it was kind of a down year. It seemed like that they didn't deserve to be in it, but they played such an easy non-conference schedule, and they had such an easy road to the, in the Big Ten, and they were able to kind of build their power rating by overpowering, mid-level and below teams, to be frank about it. And when they stepped up in class, they weren't quite ready for that stage. So I just don't want to reward somebody for playing an easy schedule and punish somebody for playing a difficult schedule. And also, Boise State and Arizona State clearly didn't deserve byes. You've got to conference. I know people get it. Well, people say if they win all their games, they need to be in, or they need to be a high seed. Or if you win your conference, you got to be. If you win your conference, if there's 12 teams in that conference, you know what it means if you won that 12-team conference? Means you were better than the other 11 teams. Who were the other 11 teams? These conferences are not just dead equal. This is not the NFL where the top to the bottom is separated by 17 points. Conferences, are just built differently, and their strength, their overall strengths are much different. So they're going to have to, they're going to have to get some people in there that, aren't afraid to take a chance. And, I hate to say that it's political, but certainly I think part of their process, and it's the human, it's just kind of the human condition. Part of their process is, what can we sell to the public? And you can easily sell to most people, hey, they only had 1 loss. So the team had 3. They've got to be better because they just had 1 loss. They had 3. Well, not necessarily, but it's hard to sell that 3-loss team over a 1-loss team. So they're going to have to be a little bolder, a little braver, and they're going to have to accentuate and emphasize strength of schedule above and beyond everything.
Well, it's always a pleasure as we're wrapping up the college football season. Next week, we'll talk about the championship game. I want you to enjoy tonight's game. And, of course, go Horns, root for Texas tomorrow night. As we always wrap it up here, Paul, everyone knows they can find you on X at Paul Stone Sports, but tell them about your website.
Yeah, if they want to take their interest a step further, I have a website, paulstonesports.org. They can take a look there if they wish. College football and college basketball, again, paulstonesports.org.
Thank you so much, Paul. Stay warm in Texas. Hopefully no snow, sleet, ice, and all that good stuff. Best of luck this weekend, and we'll catch up with you next Thursday.
Good deal. Have a great week, Jeff. Always good visiting with you.
Take care. The one and only Paul Stone. Go follow him at Paul Stone Sports, at paulstonesports.org, the best in the business. When we come back after a quick commercial break, Mr. Andy Powers to talk about the big, bad Bruins. And, of course, Hockey East and the BC Eagles. Stay tuned.
Jared, hey, we're gonna need you to tone it down with the Summer Friday thing, okay?
What are you talking about?
Well, for one, it's not summer anymore.
Oh, really?
Coconut. Also, who is this?
I'm the caddy.
Oh, he's my intern.
Sorry, intern. I'm his intern.
Yeah, he's doing a great job.
No golfing in the office, okay? Summer Fridays are over. You can keep the Hawaiian shirt, but the rest of this stuff, all right? Are you grilling?
Oh, yeah. Did you want a burger or a hot dog?
No, grilling in the office.
That's a good point. We should take this outside.
No, that don't. You put that right back down.
Yo, it's all in the hips.
Oh, dude, come on, we gotta go. Let's go.
Well, what better way to start the new year than bring in a good friend and colleague, Mr. Andy Powers. What's up, Andy?
Jeff, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. I got the beautiful Boston Bruins backdrop there. We wish it could be a happier New Year. Losers of 4 in a row, 0-8 on the power play, outscored 20-10 in the last 4. It wasn't Montgomery after all, Andy.
Isn't that amazing? It's the players. I mean, it's always been the players. And before you went to break, you said the big bad Bruins. I mean, I don't think they're any of that. The only thing I can confirm is that they are the Bruins. They're really struggling right now. They struggle to score goals. I don't think that this roster is constituted to be effective offensively in the National Hockey League. And so I'll be surprised if anything changes.
You know, there's nothing you can do. I mean, there were chants after losing 4-0 to the Oilers the other night at TD Garden to fire Sweeney. It sounds like we're talking the Patriots here. You know, it was Mayo. Well, Mayo was set up to lose. In other words, the roster construction was pitiful. Bill Belichick actually was supposed to be coaching this year. Then Gerard Mayo was to come in this year. Well, we're talking hockey now. Off season, Swayman holds out. He was setting the market for the goalies. He was doing the right thing. There was a chemistry issue. It seems like the roster was a little divided in the locker room on his antics. Early into the season, start slow, fire Montgomery. He goes to St. Louis in a heartbeat. Here we are now. I'm not saying Sakic it's the problem. It's the roster. Andy Powers, you're the GM. You're the owner. What do we do? Do we just suck it up and figure out how we get to the playoffs? Maybe win a round? What do you do starting today?
Well, I think you make an interesting analogy in New England. Obviously, the Patriots, the turmoil that they're going through, but I think the Bruins are one step behind. If I'm the owner, you got to make a change. You got to make a change all the way at the top. Cam Neely, Don Sweeney, like those days, you got to bring in people that can construct a roster. If they want to be cap sensitive, that's fine. You got to go out there and build a cap sensitive team. But you're a big market team. I mean, I don't know, understand, and I know that's the Bruins historically. That's where they differ from the Patriots. Historically, the Bruins have been penny pinchers. The Jacobs family that owns the Bruins historically have not went out and paid people. I don't think that that's fair in this sense that they've spent some money on some guys. Now you could argue, and you'd be correct, they haven't complimented the players that they've paid around them. So right now, like first of all, and I know you probably want to get to this, the World Junior Tournament. Do you know that the Bruins were one of only, I think, two teams that didn't have draft picks represented in the World Junior Tournament? So that kind of goes to not only you bad present day, which you are, but there's nothing that you can point to coming down the pipeline and be like, well, once this guy gets here or once this group develops, then we'll be in good shape. So if your initial question, if you're the owner, you got to rip it apart. You got to rip it apart, and maybe hockey becomes irrelevant in New England for the next 4 or 5 years. But the direction that this team is going in is it's not sustainable. It's not productive, and it has to change.
Watching yesterday, your good friend, Mr. Felger, of course, he was breaking down the fact that there is a handful of guys that you can't move because of basically no trade or can't move. And then there's a handful of guys that you kind of can move, but you can't right this second. You talk about the high paid guys, Marchand, McAvoy, now Swayman. I don't want to say they're stuck, but I'm going to say they're kind of stuck here right now, Andy. I mean, how can we light a fire under their asses? I don't know what to say.
What are you talking about? They've already pulled that card. They've already fired Montgomery. That was supposed to be the spark. If you had anything, Jeff, if you put me in the woods, now I'm a homebody. If you put me in the woods with no thing to start a fire, I can't start a fire. If you put the Boston Bruins and you say, we're going to fire the coach, that'll light a fire underneath these guys. They can't light a fire. They're not going to score goals. It doesn't matter who's behind the bench. They're incapable of producing offense in this league. You say they're stuck. There's guys that they can move. Trent Frederick is one of them. I think he's attractive to some organizations, some teams that are on the precipice of a playoff push, or maybe a top tier team that wants to just get deeper. Trent Frederick would be a great fit. The goalie, Swayman's going to be fine. He's not the problem. You can't score goals. You got embarrassed in your own building against the Oilers the other day. The Oilers are a team that everybody knows, like they're highly effective offensively. That's kind of the model that you want to get to. Now, you're not going to get a Connor McDavid or even a Leon Draisaitl, but you don't have guys in your roster. Pastrnak is supposed to be your bell cow, and the guy disappears for games at a time. So the problem is with the roster. Fix the problem. Don't start pointing fingers. Like what's done is done. These guys are here. Like you got to make hay with what you got, and it's probably not going to be these guys. To the Patriots analogy, the Patriots, the GM or whatever the position they call Elliot Wolf, he's probably not going to be the guy. But you can't get rid of the GM mid-season. In hockey, you have to address that now so you can go into next year's draft. Maybe draft collateral is what you want, and you can get rid of players that you can move, like Frederick, like some other guys on this roster. But it's not going to be fixed tomorrow. It's not going to be fixed with the coaching change. This is a problem from the root of it that needs to be kind of addressed within the long term.
Well, it's funny because I always say this, there's no Tuukka Rask to blame anymore. Yeah. There's no Bruce Cassidy who was too hard on the young players and just goes to Vegas and wins a cup. In comes Monty, President's Cup, the regular season, which we know Jacobs loves. Why? Because that's more playoff games, that's more concessions. And every time when it got to a boiling point, Sweeney and Cam how do we save our jobs? How do we save our jobs? Right. Well, let's
point the finger.
Point the finger. There's nowhere to hide now, and they are Abbott and Costello, Bonnie and Clyde. When one goes, they're both going. And you talked about the World Juniors where the USA wins in overtime against Finland there. No representation. You do Hockey East. You do BC. You do the elite of the elite. Where do we start, Andy? Where do we start here?
Yeah, I mean, if for the Bruins, you talk about that. They do have some good draft picks. They're just not young kids. Like you saw the U.S. was littered. The Washington Capitals, which is one of the best stories of the season. Not only is Ovechkin scoring goals at a pace of a 25-year-old or a 30-year-old, but the Washington Capitals were, they looked like they were in disarray last year. They go out and get Pierre-Luc Dubois from the Kings. He's scoring goals. He scored both of their goals last night. You look at the two draft picks they had in the American team, Ryan Leonard being one of them. Like they have young, exciting kids in their system that can go up and complement, and they can hopefully stay competitive. But they did that in short order. Now their roster is better than the Bruins, but for the Bruins to be in the situation that they're in and not have any talented young kind of marquee stars that you typically see in the World Junior. Some of the Bruins draft picks are older. They're 20 or above, so they don't play in that tournament. But the young stars, that's what you're looking at if you're a fan of an NHL team, and you can really see like, oh wow, can't wait till this kid gets here, or can't wait for them to sign him or bring him on board. Bruins had none of that. No buzz, No buzz from the Boston Bruins. So you have no buzz with the current team. You have no buzz with the minor league system. That's just it reflects poorly on the whole operation.
I remember back in the day when my kids one of them was getting ready to go to college. We were doing the tour. We go to BU a couple times a year. I know it's a tough subject here. I watched Charlie McAvoy in diapers on BU. And the buzz. Oh, here comes the next Ray Bork. Here comes the next Bobby Orr. When I grew up, we haven't had that buzz in so long here. Yet you see it every time you go to a BC game to work, whether home or away, or you're going to the Frozen Four. As a Bruins fan, Andy, can you give us some hope? It starts up top. The way this is going, Sweeney and Cam will be gone. I don't know how they pulled that plug, but NHL draft, you got to be able to draft and draft well, and that hasn't been a forte for those two.
It really hasn't, and hopefully, like whether it's Sweeney right now as a GM or whoever comes in as a GM, if they do move on from Sweeney, like go out and get young kids, like draft collateral. Like one of the biggest things that I see in the rinks when I go is the NHL guys that are kind of scouting, the next generation. Like so, in a trade, just as an example, if they trade Trent Frederick, they'll get 2 young kids. Let's just say they trade him to the Canucks. Canucks are in disarray, similar to Boston. They have infighting in the locker room. They're going to have to make a move. They're supposed to be better than they were. But if you trade into the Canucks, you go get 2 of their top 5 prospects from their farm system. It's similar to the way Major League Baseball trades are made. They, typically not player for player, but you're going to get their minor league system and really kind of pad your minor league system. If you look at the Providence or the Bruins as a whole, their American Hockey League team in Providence is similar to their Boston club. It's a lot of hardworking guys, big body guys, skilled, but not terribly skilled. If you remember I don't want to bore you names, but they had this kid, Georgi Merkulov, who put up a ton of points last year in the American League, was supposed to be the next wave, never really kind of had a good camp, never really they just pulled him up for his first National Hockey League game 2 weeks ago. Was just another guy, just like their roster is. So they sent him back down. Like they'll need to have more depth in their farm system if they trade guys from their current roster. They're not going to fix it this year. They're probably not going to be a playoff team. They need to go out and get depth in their American Hockey League system or their farm system that will kind of gloss over the misses that they've had in the last 5 or 6 drafts.
Before we jump over to BC Hockey East, what's going on over there? We talk about the Bruins and how bad they're struggling. And you talk about Vancouver. They were one of the sexy teams out west everyone was jumping on. Nashville spends a boatload of money. Yeah. They're doing nothing. And this might bring a smile to you, but I think the stench of the stench is got to be the New York Rangers. What the hell is going on at the Mecca?
Well, that's another problem. And if you look at Chris Drury, who's the GM, another BU guy, they really you can't blame it. You're just having guys with bad seasons. Chris Kreider is the guy that they're trying to pick on. He's a Boston College guy. He's been in the league for a number of years. Just really not having the same season that he's had in the past. He'd be a good trade candidate. But again, he's older. So the Bruins, I mean, you're looking to build for the future. You don't want to build on a guy that's been in the league for 12, 15 years. But with the Rangers, I think there is some depth there that you could, hopefully these guys just start playing better. Like these guys, Panarin, Zibanejad, these guys have done it. That's the difference between Boston and New York. Because you look at the Boston lineup, like these guys haven't. There's a lot of guys on Boston that you'd be like, well, he's just having an off year. Like he could catch fire in a bottle here. New York has some guys that are just underperforming. And so the risk there is, or the reward is that they're going to wake up. They're going to start playing as a unit. They'll rattle off some wins. Just like, the lowly Buffalo Sabres, they kind of came back after that, the Christmas break, and they won some hockey games. Same thing with the Canadians, although they're brutal. They've won some games lately. So you hope that New York does something. You mentioned fire the coach. I don't know if they'll fire the coach, but something that adds that spark where they catch fire and they get where they should be. or at least they get into the playoffs. But to be fair, Vancouver is on the other side. Vancouver's got to get some guys that they have a lot of going on off the ice. They have infighting in the team between JT Miller and Elias Pettersson, two of their top players that obviously it's spilled out of the locker room. They don't get along. They don't like each other, and that's a big problem. The amount of time you spend together, you're trying to win with guys, and if you don't like them, it's very, very tough to do. So I think the Rangers are in a better position than the Bruins. Canucks are in the better position than the Bruins, but certainly those teams have issues. Maybe there's some trading partners in there.
Last in the NHL here, we do a lot of sports investing here on a day-to-day basis. We're very high on the futures market. It's January 9th. If I said Andy Powers, who's a buy low candidate in the NHL and who's a sell high, and what you see going to happen and going into the second half of the season?
Well, I think I mentioned the Capitals. I think that they're having a really surprise year. They're scoring goals. They're getting a depth scoring. Pierre-Luc Dubois, Alex Ovechkin, he's back healthy now. He scored a goal the other day. They're a team that's really good. I think if you look at, I know there's a lot of buzz on the Oilers. I just don't trust their goaltending. But for me, buy low right now, I think, you and I talk about the Hurricanes. Hurricanes are a team that they haven't been as sexy as they have been in the past. Typically they're a regular season champion and they're postseason kind of afterthought. Maybe this year is a little bit different. They've had a sluggish regular season. They still have a ton of talent. They have a good back end with Brent Burns. So I think that you could probably buy low on them. They're going to be in the playoffs. And then sell high. There's a lot of teams that got off to a good start. Calgary Flames being one of them, and they're coming down now. I think that probably, I hate to say it because I picked them, like the Avalanche haven't been as dominant as they probably should have. I know they won 2 of their last 3 games. McKinnon got a little dinged up last night, but they seem to be doing it kind of with smoke and mirrors. So I don't know if they're going to be a Stanley Cup contender, like I said they were going to be at the beginning of the season. So those are probably the sell high. I think right now, you talk about today and tomorrow. I look at the Sabres. Bet on the Sabres. The Sabres are playing the best hockey they've played all season. They've won some games lately. They're scoring some goals. And then I think the Stars as well. The Stars are starting to kind of round into form here. Ben Bishop's been really good in net. They're starting to score goals. Jason Robertson is one of the up-and-coming stars in the league. But the Dallas Stars, we talked about the last couple of years. They've been to the Western Conference Final. They're a tested team. So this is the point of the season where they kind of start to kind of just stockpile wins and really load up into the playoffs.
BC, I'm not going to bring back last year because last year was a wagon. Frozen 4 championship game, 2-1 favorites over Denver. I actually watched Denver the other night. I think it was like Friday night. I was watching Denver at Maine, and there's that Maine team that back in our day when I had hair and it wasn't gray, Maine was a force back then, not just in hockey and baseball too, Andy, believe it or not. You're here now on January 9th. Compare last year's BC team at this point to where you are right now today.
Well, first of all, every time I'm on, you bring up hair, you son of a gun. But BC, so last season, BC, you mentioned they had a wagon. They were terrific. Cutter Gauthier, who's with the Ducks now, Will Smith, who's with the Sharks, Ryan Leonard. They ultimately ran into Denver, a really well-coached team. They shut them out in the national championship game. First time all season that BC was shut out. So, you're going to tip your cap to Denver in that situation. This point last year, this is where BC really started to catch fire. They had back-to-back games against BU. They split that series. Actually, they swept that series, and then they lost to BU in the first round of the Beanpot. And then they never lost again until the national championship game. This team this year is a little bit different. It hasn't been as dominant as it probably should be. That being said, they're the number 2 ranked team in the country. Michigan State is number 1 in college hockey. Of course, BC started the season by splitting with Michigan State at Michigan State. So BC, even though they haven't played their best hockey, they've beaten a lot of really good teams. And that's encouraging. Boston College, I think, in my opinion, has the best goaltender in the country in Jacob Fowler. I think they have probably the best hockey player in the country in Ryan Leonard. They have the best freshman in the country with James Haggins. So all those 2 kids you saw in the World Junior. So they're in real good position. I think that BC, if you can't have everything, but if they need consistent secondary scoring, that was the thing last year. They had the top line with Cutter Gauthier on it that was scoring every game, and then they had the freshman line with Perreault, Leonard, and Smith, 3 unbelievably talented freshmen. Only 2 of them are on the team now because Will Smith turned pro. But last year they had 2 lines that could beat you every night. This year it's really been only the top line, which is Perreault, Leonard, and Haggins. Those guys are going to put points up every night. Doesn't matter who you play, but they need that good secondary scoring, and hopefully that finds its way in the second half.
We're getting close to that time of year, to the Bean Pot. I'm going to get you on before the Bean Pot, but I know Pepe's going to miss that first round of the Bean Pot. Wink, wink, if you need any help for that. Wink, wink, wink. But give us a Bean Pot early preview. How's that sound?
Well, I know we'll need somebody to carry the radio equipment, and I know you're very strong, Jeff. So maybe we can get you in the door there to get set up. The Bean Pot this year will be between BC and BU. Obviously, every year it is. But, the most dominant team the last 5-6 years has been Northeastern. Northeastern has struggled this season. They lost a lot of kids in the transfer portal. So it's that transfer portal, which I don't know if I like or I don't like. I'm pretty sure I don't like it. But that impacts different teams. Northeastern was adversely impacted last year. They lost a lot of kids. They've struggled. Harvard hasn't gotten off to the kind of a great start. So BC plays Northeastern in the first round. BU plays Harvard. It looks like BC and BU are on a collision course for the second Monday when the championship is played. And just by scheduling nature, that will be, if BC and BU do make it to the finals and they play each other, that'll be the 3rd time they play each other in like a 2-week period. So they'll be familiar with each other by then. I think that, in my opinion, Boston College has the better goaltender in that matchup. BU did have a ton of kids on that World Junior team too. Hudson, the defenseman, was terrific. So they do have some talented kids, but I think BC and BU, we're going to be in the final. And then, if I'm a betting man, which I am, BC wins in the final just because we're smarter.
Well, I'll close with this, Andy, and I can't remember what I had for breakfast this morning, but I do remember last year's schedule. BC beat them twice leading up to the Bean Pot final, and the rest is history, right?
Yeah, then BU won the Bean Pot game, so that's the one that everybody wants to mention. So, yeah, it'll be tough. It's going to be an exciting 2 weeks in February. The most exciting collegiate hockey tournament in the country, the Bean Pot. Everybody loves it, except if you live outside of New England.
Andy, I can't thank you enough. Have a great weekend. Stay warm. Pretty cold out there, and we'll catch up before the Bean Pot.
I hate the cold. Jeff, thank you. Always a pleasure. I'll talk to you soon, buddy.
Take care. Andy Powers, I'd say go follow him on social media, but he doesn't be on social media. So anyways, great friend, great colleague, the best in the business when it comes to hockey. Gonna take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we'll wrap it up. Stay tuned. ECSI fans, you want to revolutionize your sports investing habits? Allow me to tell you about WagerWire. WagerWire is an app that helps you become a superior bettor by allowing you to sync all your sports books and track all your bets in one place. See your current action, your betting history, and stats. You could also sign up for sports books and collect bonus offers. Follow them at WagerWire on X, as it's the best account on the platform. Head to App Store or Play Store now and search WagerWire and download the app.
here like a torch to a flame when it burns hot.
Oh, what a show. What a show to start the day. Of course, Mr. Paul Stone at Paul Stone Sports at paulstonesports.org. Go check out that website, breaking down the 2 Final Four games tonight. We kick off with Notre Dame -1, 1.5 versus Penn State. And of course, tomorrow, Ohio State 5.5 against Texas. And then Andy Powers, great friend, colleague, BC Hockey East, knows the NHL inside and out, and just great to catch up with him. 3 o'clock, the return of Lou Finicaro, Fight Night Fortunes. UFC is back. Make sure you're there. And at 5 o'clock, Ron Marmolevsky, like no other, will be breaking down some college football and, of course, the NFL. Guys, back east, stay warm. It's cold out there, and we will see you at 3 p.m. Eastern.